Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitilapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitilapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitilapa Vishnu Mahabhagavat Shila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitilapa Vishnu Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitil Vishta Vaishnav Sarvabhaumashta Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanup Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachar Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. शिक्षेत मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय. सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय. श्री मन देवी गंगा देवी की जय. श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय. श्री भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री पूर्णमासी योग माय की जय. श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय. श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. नमो विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने. नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने. वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः. गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः. यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेत्य कृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव. पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवो विनेदुस्तं सार्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्. शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो यत्पात्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्. नष्टप्रेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवदुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणन्तिकम्. भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्. भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृन्द. हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Haribo. So we're going to sorry, I got distracted by a WhatsApp message. Okay. So we just finished reading chapter 26. the fundamental principles of material nature. And we heard about what? The Lord's interaction with Prakriti is just a pastime by his will. The jiva's interaction with Prakriti leads to his bondage. Characteristics and products of pradhan. And we read about the characteristics of time, the characteristics of Mahatattva and Chitta, characteristics of the false ego, characteristics of products of the false ego and Sattva and Rajas, and then which was the mind, intelligence, and the senses, and then the characteristics of products of false ego and tamas, which is the tanmatras and the gross elements, Karya Shishti, the creation of the various limbs of the Virat Purush. And then we ended off with the Devata's attempts to wake up the Virat Purush. The Devatas, after the limbs of the Virat Purush were manifested, there's all his sense organs, the mouth, nostrils, eyes, ears, skin, and the subtle sense organ along with them, and this sense devata. After all those limbs were finally manifested, then the devatas wanted to wake up the Virat Purush. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the respective apertures of the Virat Purush along with the subtle sense, one after another, to wake up the Virat Purush. But they were all unsuccessful. Like, for example, the fire god entered his mouth along with the organ of speech, etc. So the Virat Purush rises. However, when Vasudeva entered the heart along with the Chitta, the Virat Purush rose up from the water. The pran's mind, intelligence cannot wake up a sleeping individual without the intervention of the Supersoul. To contemplate on the Supersoul through devotion, detachment, and spiritual knowledge is the goal of explaining all these elements. And so now we are on 27. Let me just... Actually, wait, I'm going to put this so that I can see your comments while I'm reading. I'm just going to put this on my second screen. Okay. There. Dandavat pranams Indira Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji, and Gargaraj. Hare Krishna. Okay. Understanding material nature. One second. That's probably an annoying background, isn't it? I'm going to change that. That's better. Okay. Understanding material nature, chapter 27. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Prakritistopi purusho na jyate prakritarguna avikara dakartritva nirgunatvaj jalarkavat. The personality of Godhead, Kapila continued. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. Sun. Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapila has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment and transcendental knowledge for understanding the science of God. Here, the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes of material nature remains just like the sun reflected on water. When the sun is reflected on water, the movement of the water or the coolness or unsteadiness of the water cannot affect the sun. Similarly, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. When one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he becomes just like the sun reflected on water. Although a devotee appears to be in the material world, actually he is in the transcendental world. As the reflection of the sun appears to be on the water, but is many millions of miles away from the water, so one engaged in the Bhakti Yoga process is nirgun, are unaffected by the qualities of material nature. Avikar means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that each and every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and thus his eternal position is to cooperate or dovetail his energy with the Supreme Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy and activities for sense gratification, this change of position is called vikar. Similarly, even in this material world, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change, because that is his natural duty. As stated in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, liberation means reinstatement in one's original position. The original position is of one rendering service to the Lord. Bhakti Yogena Bhaktya. When one becomes detached from material attraction and engages fully in devotional service, that is changelessness. Akartritvat means not doing anything for sense gratification. When one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship and therefore a reaction. But when one does everything for Krishna, there is no proprietorship over the activities. By changelessness and by not claiming the proprietorship of activities, one can immediately situate himself in the transcendental position in which one is not touched by the modes of material nature, just as the reflection of the sun is unaffected by water. Sa esha yahi prakriter guneshvabhi visajate aham kriya vimodatma kartasmitya vimanyate. When the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Purport. Actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. The living entity has no independence. When he is under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is free. But when under the impression that he is satisfying his senses, he engages in sense gratificatory activities. But when he, under the impression that he is satisfying his senses, he engages in sense gratificatory activities, he is actually under the spell of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Prakrite kriyamanani. One acts according to the particular modes of nature he has acquired. Guna refers to the qualities of nature. He is under the qualities of nature, but he falsely thinks that he is the proprietor. This false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his bona fide representative. Arjuna, in Bhagavad Gita, was trying to accept for himself the responsibility for killing his grandfather and teacher in the fight. But he became freed from that proprietorship of action when he acted under the direction of Krishna. He fought, but actually he was freed from the reactions of fighting, although in the beginning, when he was non-violent, unwilling to fight, the entire responsibility was upon him. That is the difference between liberation and conditioning. A conditioned soul may be very good and act in the mode of goodness, but still he is conditioned under the spell of material nature. A devotee, however, acts completely under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Thus his actions may not appear to be of a very high quality to the common man, but the devotee has no responsibility. Anyhow, this is reminding me of an incident that just happened a couple of days ago, but this whole section actually. But anyways, I'm going to listen to it. Tena sangsara padavim avashabhyeta nirvrita prasangikai karma doshai sarasan mishrayonishu. The conditioned soul, therefore, transmigrates into different species of life, higher and lower, because of his association with the modes of material nature. Unless he is relieved of material activities, he has to accept this position because of his faulty work. Purport. Here the word karma doshai means by faulty actions. This refers to any activity, good or bad, performed in this material world. They are all contaminated, faulty actions because of material association. The foolish conditioned soul may think that he is offering charity by opening hospitals for material benefit or by opening an educational institution for material education. But he does not know that all such work is also faulty because it will not give him relief from the process of transmigration from one body to another. It is clearly stated here, Sar asan mishuryo nishu. This means that one may take birth in a very high family, or he may take his birth in higher planets among the demigods for his so-called pious activities in the material world. But this work is also faulty because it does not give liberation. To take birth in a nice place or a high family does not mean that one avoids undergoing the material tribulations, the pangs of birth, death, old age, and disease. A conditioned soul under the spell of material nature cannot understand that any action he performs for sense gratification is faulty, and that only his activities and devotional service to the Lord can give him release from the reaction of faulty activities. Because he does not cease such faulty activities, he has to change to different bodies, some high and some low. That is called sangsara padavim, which means this material world, from which there is no release. One who desires material liberation has to turn his activities to devotional service. There is no alternative. Arte hyavidyamanepi sangsriterna nivartate dhyayato vishayan asya swapne narta kamoyata. Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease, and just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. Purport. The example of a dream is very appropriate. Due to different mental conditions, in dreams we are put into advantageous and disadvantageous positions. Similarly, the spirit soul has nothing to do with this material nature. But because of his mentality of lording it over, he is put into the position of conditional existence. Conditional existence is described here as dhyayato vishayan asya. Vishaya means an object of enjoyment. As long as one continues to think that he can enjoy material advantages, he is in conditioned life. But as soon as he comes to his senses, he develops the knowledge that he is not the enjoyer, for the only enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, he is the beneficiary for all the results of sacrifices and penances, Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam, and he is the proprietor of all the three worlds, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. He is the actual friend of all living entities. But instead of leaving proprietorship, enjoyment, and the actual position as the friend of all living entities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, We claim that we are the proprietors, the enjoyers, and the friends. We perform philanthropic work, thinking that we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country, but actually he cannot be the greatest friend of everyone. The only friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated, and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. The power of friendship is limited. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are an unlimited number of living entities, and our resources are limited. Therefore, we cannot be of any real benefit to the people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may know that the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend is Krishna. Then this illusory dream of lording it over material nature will vanish. Sorry, I just meant. Attaiva shanaischittam prasaktam asatam pati bhakti yogena tivrena viraktya cha nair vasham. This verse looks very familiar. Let's see. It is the duty of every conditioned soul to engage his polluted consciousness, which is now attached to material enjoyment, in very serious devotional service with detachment. Thus his mind and consciousness will be under full control. The process of liberation is very nicely explained in this verse. The cause of one's becoming conditioned by material nature is his thinking himself the enjoyer, the proprietor, or the friend of all living entities. This false thinking is a result of contemplation on sense enjoyment. When one thinks that he is the best friend to his countrymen, to society, or to humanity, and he engages in various nationalistic, philanthropic, and altruistic activities, all that is just so much concentration on sense gratification. Wow. The so-called national leader or humanist does not serve everyone. He serves his senses only. That is a fact. But the conditioned soul cannot understand this because he is bewildered by the spell of material nature. It is therefore recommended in this verse that one engage very seriously in the devotional service of the Lord. This means that one should not think that he is the proprietor, benefactor, friend, or enjoyer. We should always be cognizant that the real enjoyer is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the basic principle of Bhakti Yoga. One must be firmly convinced of these three principles. One should always think that Krishna is the proprietor, Krishna is the enjoyer, and Krishna is the friend. Not only should he understand these principles himself, but he should try to convince others and propagate Krishna consciousness. As soon as one engages in such serious devotional service of the Lord, naturally the propensity to falsely claim lordship over material nature disappears. That detachment is called vairagya. Instead of being absorbed in so-called material lordship, one engages in Krishna consciousness. That is control of consciousness. The yoga process necessitates controlling the senses. Yoga indriya samyama. Since the senses are always active, their activity should be engaged in devotional service. One cannot stop their activities. If one wants to artificially stop the activities of the senses, his attempt will be a failure. Even the great yogi Vishwamitra, who is trying to control his senses by the yoga process, fell victim to the beauty of Menaka. There are many such instances. Unless one's mind and consciousness are fully engaged in devotional service, there is always the opportunity for the mind to become occupied with desires for sense gratification. One particular point mentioned in this verse is very significant. It is said here, prasaktam asatam pati. The mind is always attracted by asat, the temporary, material existence. Because we have been associated with material nature since time immemorial, we have become accustomed to our attachment to this temporary material nature. The mind has to be fixed at the eternal lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. One has to fix the mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. Then everything will be very nice. Thus, the seriousness of Bhakti Yoga is stressed in this verse. Yamati Bir Yoga Patai Abhyasan Shadayanvita Mai Bhavena Sattena Matkata Shravanena Cha. One has to become faithful by practicing the controlling process of the yoga system and must elevate himself to the platform of unalloyed devotional service by chanting and hearing about me. Purport. Yoga is practiced in 8 different stages: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Yama and Niyama mean practicing the controlling process by following strict regulations. And Asana refers to the sitting postures. These help raise one to the standard of faithfulness in devotional service. The practice of yoga by physical exercise is not the ultimate goal. The real end is to concentrate and to control the mind and train oneself to be situated in faithful devotional service. Bhavena, or bhav, is a very important factor in the process of yoga or in any spiritual process. Bhav is explained in Bhagavad Gita 10.8. Buddha Bhava Samanvita. Buddha Bhava Samanvita. One should be absorbed in the thought of love of Krishna. When one knows that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of everything and that everything emanates from him, aham sarvasya papava, then one understands the Vedanta aphorism, Janma dasya yata, the original source of everything. And then he can become absorbed in bhav, or the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Rupa Goswami explains very nicely in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu how this bhav, or the preliminary stage of love of God, is achieved. He states that, first of all, one has to become faithful, Shraddhayanvita. Faith is attained by controlling the senses, either by yoga practice, following the rules and regulations, and practicing the sitting postures, or by engaging directly in bhakti yoga, as recommended in the previous verse. Of the 9 different items of bhakti yoga, the first and foremost is to chant and hear about the Lord. That is also mentioned here, Matkata Shravanena Cha. Standard of faithfulness by following the rules and regulations of the system, and the same goal can be achieved simply by chanting and hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord. The word cha is significant. Bhakti yoga is direct, and the other process is indirect. But even if the indirect process is taken, there is no success unless one comes fully to the direct process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Therefore, the word satyena is used here. In this connection, Swami Sridhar comments that satyena means nishkapatena, without duplicity. The impersonalists are full of duplicity. Sometimes they pretend to execute devotional service, but their ultimate idea is to become one with the Supreme. This is duplicity, kapata. The Bhagavatam does not allow this duplicity. In the beginning of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is clearly stated, paramo nirmatsaranam. This treatise, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, is meant for those who are completely free from envy. The same point is again stressed here. Unless one is completely faithful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages himself in the process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, there is no possibility for liberation. Sarvabhuta samatvena nirvarena prasangata brahmacharyena maunena swadharmena baliyasa. In executing devotional service, one has to see every living entity equally, without enmity toward anyone, yet without intimate connections with anyone. One has to observe celibacy, be grave, and execute his eternal activities, offering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. A devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who seriously engages in devotional service is equal to all living entities. There are various species of living entities, but a devotee does not see the outward covering. He sees the inner soul inhabiting the body. Because each and every soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does not see any difference. That is the vision of a learned devotee. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, a devotee or a learned sage does not see any difference between a learned Brahmin, a dog, an elephant, or a cow, because he knows that the body is the outer covering only, and that the soul is actually part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. A devotee has no enmity towards any living entity, but that does not mean that he mixes with everyone. That is prohibited. Aprasangata means not to be in intimate touch with everyone. A devotee is concerned with his execution of devotional service, and he should therefore mix with devotees only in order to advance his objective. He has no business mixing with others, for although he does not see anyone as his enemy, his dealings are only with persons who engage in devotional service. A devotee should observe the vow of celibacy. Celibacy does not necessitate that one be absolutely free from sex life. Satisfaction with one's wife is permitted, also under the vow of celibacy. The best policy is to avoid sex life altogether. That is preferable. Otherwise, a devotee can get married under religious principles and live peacefully with a wife. A devotee should not speak needlessly. A serious devotee has no time to speak of nonsense. He is always busy in Krishna consciousness. Whenever he speaks about Krishna. Mona means silence. Silence does not mean that one should not speak at all, but that one should not speak of nonsense. He should be very enthusiastic about speaking about Krishna. Another important item described here is swadharmena, or being exclusively occupied in one's eternal occupation, which is to act as the eternal servitor of the Lord, or to act in Krishna consciousness. The next word, baliyasa, means offering the results of all activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee does not act on his personal account for sense gratification. Whatever he earns, whatever he eats, and whatever he does, he offers for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yadrichayopalabdhena santushto mittabhun muni vivikta sharana shanto maitra karuna atmavan. For his income, a devotee should be satisfied with what he earns without great difficulty. He should not eat more than what is necessary. He should live in a secluded place and always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, compassionate, and self-realized. Purport. Everyone who has accepted a material body must maintain the necessities of the body by acting or earning some livelihood. A devotee should only work for such an A devotee should only work for such income as is absolutely necessary. He should be satisfied always with such income and should not endeavor to earn more and more simply to accumulate the unnecessary. A person in the conditioned state who has no money is always fond of working very hard to earn some with a person in the conditioned state who has no money is always found working very hard to earn some with the object of lording it over material nature. Kapila Dev instructs that we should not endeavor hard for things which may come automatically without extraneous labor. The exact word used in this connection, yadrichaya, means that every living entity has a predestined happiness and distress in his present body. This is called the law of karma. It is not possible that simply by endeavors to accumulate more money, a person will be able to do so. Otherwise, almost everyone would be on the same level of wealth. In reality, everyone is earning and acquiring according to his predestined karma. According to the Bhagavatam conclusion, we are sometimes faced with dangerous or miserable conditions without endeavoring for them. And similarly, we may have prosperous conditions without endeavoring for them. We are advised to let these things come as predestined. We should engage our valuable time in prosecuting Krishna consciousness. In other words, one should be satisfied by his natural condition. If by predestination one is put in a certain condition of life which is not very prosperous in comparison to another's position, one should not be disturbed. He should simply try to utilize his valuable time to advance in Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness does not depend on any materially prosperous or distressed condition. It is free from the conditions imposed by material life. A very poor man can execute Krishna consciousness as effectively as a very rich man. One should therefore be very satisfied with his position as offered by the Lord. Another word here is mitabhuk. This means that one should eat only as much as necessary to maintain the body. One should eat only as much as necessary to maintain the body and soul together. One should not be gluttonous to satisfy the tongue. Grains, fruits, milk, and similar foods are allotted for human consumption. One should not be excessively eager to satisfy the tongue and eat that which is not meant for humanity. Particularly, a devotee should only eat prasad, or food which is offered to the personality of Godhead. His position is to accept the remnants of those foodstuffs. Innocent foods like grains, vegetables, fruits, and flowers, and milk preparations are offered to the Lord, and therefore there is no scope of offering foods which are in the modes of passion and ignorance. A devotee should not be greedy. It is also recommended that the devotee should be muni, or thoughtful. He should always think of Krishna and how to render better service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That should be his only anxiety. As a materialist is always thoughtful about improving his material condition, a devotee's thoughts should always be engaged in improving his condition in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he should be a muni. The next item recommended is that a devotee should live in a secluded place. Generally, a common man is interested in pounds, shillings, and pence, or materialistic advancement in life, which is unnecessary for a devotee. A devotee should select a place of residence where everyone is interested in devotional service. Generally, therefore, a devotee goes to a sacred place of pilgrimage where devotees live. It is recommended that he live in a place where there is no large number of ordinary men. It is very important to live in a secluded place. Vivikta Shara. The next item is Shanta, or peacefulness. The devotee should not be agitated. He should be satisfied with his natural income, eat only as much as he needs to keep his health, live in a secluded place, and always remain peaceful. Peace of mind is necessary for prosecuting Krishna consciousness. The next item is Maitra, friendliness. A devotee should be friendly to everyone, but his intimate friendship should be with devotees only. With others, he should be official. He may say, "Yes, sir, what you say is all right," but he is not intimate with them. The devotee should, however, have compassion for persons who are innocent, who are neither atheistic nor very much advanced in spiritual realization. A devotee should be compassionate towards them and instruct them as far as possible in making advancement in Krishna consciousness. A devotee should always remain Atmavan, or situated in a spiritual position. He should not forget that his main concern is to make advancement in spiritual consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, and he should not ignorantly identify himself with the body or the mind. Atma means the body or the mind, but here the word Atmavan especially means that one should be self-possessed. He should always remain in the pure consciousness that he is a spirit soul and not the material body or the mind. That will make him progress confidently in Krishna consciousness. Sanubandhe cha dehismin akurvan asaragraham jnanena drishtatattvena prakrite purushasya cha. One's seeing power should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter, and one should not unnecessarily identify himself with the body and thus become attracted by bodily relationships. Purport. The conditioned souls are eager to identify with the body and consider that the body is myself, and that anything in relationship with the body or possessions of the body is mine. In Sanskrit, this is called aham mamata, I and my. And it is the root cause of all conditioned life. A person should see things as a combination of matter and spirit. He should distinguish between the nature of matter and the nature of spirit, and his real identification should be with spirit, not with matter. By this knowledge, one should avoid the false bodily concept of life. Evrita buddhavastano duri bhutanya darshana upagatatmana chakshuse arpamatmadrik. One should be situated in a transcendental position, beyond that of material consciousness, and should be aloof from all other conceptions of life, thus realizing freedom from false ego. One sees his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. Purport. Consciousness is in 3 stages under the material conception of life. When we are awake, consciousness acts in a particular way. When we are asleep, it acts in a different way. And when we are in deep sleep, consciousness acts still in another way. To become Krishna conscious, one has to become transcendental to these 3 stages of consciousness. Our present consciousness should be freed from all perceptions of life other than consciousness of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called the Duri Bhutanya Darshana, which means that when one attains perfect Krishna consciousness, he does not see anything but Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that the perfect devotee may see the movable and immovable objects, but in everything he sees, that energy of Krishna is acting. As soon as he remembers the energy of Krishna, he immediately remembers Krishna in his personal form. Therefore, in all of his observations, he sees Krishna only. In the Brahma Samhita 538, it is stated that when one's eyes are smeared with love of Krishna, Premanjana Churita, he always sees Krishna, outside and inside. This is confirmed here. One should be freed from all other vision, and in that way he is freed from all false egoistic identification and sees himself as the eternal servitor of the Lord. Chakshushe Varkam. As we can see the sun without a doubt, one who is fully developed in Krishna consciousness sees Krishna and his energy. By this vision, one becomes Atmadrik, or self-realized. When the false ego of identifying the body with the self is removed, Actual vision of life is perceivable. The senses, therefore, also become purified. Real service of the Lord begins when the senses are purified. One does not have to stop the activities of the senses, but the false ego of identifying with the body has to be removed. Then the senses automatically become purified, and with purified senses, one can actually discharge devotional service. Okay, we're finishing with this verse. Muktalingam sarabhasam asati pratipadyate saptabandhum asatchakshu sarvanusyuttamadvayam. A liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. He is the support of the material cause, and he enters into everything. He is absolute, one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy. Purport. A pure devotee can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, materially. You can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything materially manifested. He is present there only as a reflection, but a pure devotee can realize that in the darkness of material illusion, the only light is the Supreme Lord, who is its support. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the background of the material manifestation is Lord Krishna. And, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the cause of all causes. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his partial or plenary expansion, is present not only within this universe and in each and every universe, but in every atom, although he is one without a second. The word Advayam means without a second. The word Advayam, without a second, which is used in this verse, indicates that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is represented in everything, including the atoms, he is not divided. His presence in everything is explained in the next verse. We'll read this translation purport tomorrow, but I'm just going to read the translation right now. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. So let's see. Oh, I need to scan more pages of this book. It's not letting me move to the next page. Okay. So tomorrow, we'll read inferring the presence of the soul and supersoul, the soul without material coverings, Devahuti's questions about the rarity of liberation, and Kapila recommends intense practice. We'll read all about that tomorrow. Intense bhakti for a long time, perfect knowledge and renunciation, austerity, yoga, and self-absorption. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Brahmadagita Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govina Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Nikhil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shri Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai Nikhil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shri Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nikhil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimachila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimachila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Mahabhagavat Shri Bhakshara Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Shri Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupanurgarya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dashraghunath Shri Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Chai Shri Hairas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Ki Jai Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshava Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Satyavataya Namo Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Dandavat pranams Indira Mataji and Seshwari Mataji. See you tomorrow. Very good.